So it's good. So we did Erchin, so we're catching up.
We could do a couple breakfasts or something during Sukkot.
Oh, breakfast during Sukkot, we'll do. Yeah. That's Hashem. All right. All right. All right, Jabosai. Good morning. Let's begin. I really wanna first of all again wish everyone a mazel tov on the siyum we made last night at the beautiful Meilah Malka. As I pointed out, the Meilah Malka, we are a couple of siyumim behind, Baruch Hashem. So last night we made on Erchin. And we'll begin in Yeretz Hashem to make our way through the Masechtas that we've. So it happens when you learn so much Torah. Baruch Hashem, so many simim to catch up on. What a wonderful problem to have. And I also just want to give an incredible yasher koach to all of our to our Bali Tefillah, to Gabi and to Maishi, who led the two slichas last night, which were just each of them, mamish, incredible and overwhelming and beautiful. The yasher koach is to Rabbi Huda for coordinating the Meilah Malka last night, which was also truly beautiful. I'll just begin. The Svarim bring down that on the days of Slichos, so days of Slichos offer us the opportunity to be metaking for that same day of the week for the entire year. So for example, this is the Sunday of Slichos, so I can go ahead and be metaking. I could atone and rectify all of the Sundays of the past year if I maximize the Sunday of Slichos. And this year we have a very special schos because we have an entire week of slichos. You have to remind yourself of that. It's a schos to have a week of slichos. Right? Just speak to your Sephardic brethren, right? It's all right, they've had weeks. We only get 1 week. So I'll say, but understand what this means. So I'm bringing down that literally it means every single day I have the ability to make amends for that day of the week of the past year. So maybe I messed up on a couple of Sundays throughout the year. Today is my opportunity to rectify Sunday. And the Yeretz Hashem, tomorrow is my opportunity to rectify Monday. And it's an incredible opportunity. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us just unending possibilities to right the ship, and unending possibilities to make amends, and unending possibilities to right the wrongs, and to do everything we need to do to get ourselves back on track and to get our life back on the rails. And literally, the ability to atone all of the days of the year, the particular day of the week throughout the year, by ultimately maximizing one day, what you could do with one Sunday. Is there a football game today? Yeah. Okay. So I will say, again, I would just suggest, again, sometimes we waste a lot of time with football games. Nothing wrong with football games for like a couple of minutes here and there, right? But sometimes we spend hours of our lives in pursuits. I'm just using football as an example, right? Where you spend hours and hours of our lives on things that don't really yield any payros. Here's an opportunity this week, today, to go ahead and change that paradigm just a little bit. Again, recreation is good and enjoy it. I'm not telling anyone not to enjoy it, but just to be conscious of how we spend the day. Today's Sunday, and today's Sunday you could rectify the Sundays of the entire year, the past year, such as schos. Let's make sure to maximize, and what a way to begin that process with today's daf. Today's daf is daf hey. We thank the families who dedicated this morning. Shir Yonason and Rachel Wolf of Highland Park, New Jersey, dedicated the entire month of Daf Yomi in loving memory of Rachel's mother, Chaya Bas Moshe. We have a weekly learning sponsor, Maya Hoffman, in Eretz Yisrael. Incredible in memory of her father, Ronald Hoffman, Ruvain Ben Emmanuel, Zichron Livracha, and of course, our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Elul, Bennett Goldberg, who has dedicated all the shiurim and drushes in memory of his parents, Avram Ben Asher Pinchas, Feger Rezel Bas Zelig, and in the hope that all of the suburban mishpacha have their tefillos answered over the Yamim Noraim. We thank all of our sponsors. Very, very touching to see, Baruch Hashem, that our shir is sponsored from New Jersey, from Eretz Yisrael, from Baltimore. Such an incredible zechus mamish. This is the koach of Torah. The koach of Torah brings everyone together. Whether you're in Edison or whether my Hoffman lives, I believe, in Ashkelon, Ashkelon, whether you're in Ashkelon, wherever you are, Torah is the great glue that brings Am Yisrael together. And I both say with that, let us begin. So today's daf is daf Hey. We are going to pick up in Meretz Hashem on Dalet Amud Beis at the two dots. Klal. The truth is, this is just one long quote from the Mishnah till we get to the bottom of the daf. So Klal, I'm Rabbi Yeshua. Kol shahaisala shas heter la kohanim ein mo'olin ba. So we'll say the Mishnah espoused the principle. And the principle is, any time that you have something that became permitted to Kohanim, so i.e. once a sacrificial item becomes permitted for Kohanic consumption, ein mo'olin ba, it is no longer subject to Meilah, which makes sense, because once ultimately again it's permitted to Kohanim, then what? Essentially what occurs? It becomes quote-unquote like chulin. Now again, of course, it's not really chulin, right? It's not really chulin, because at the end of the day, I, a non-Kohen, can't partake of it. But since the Kohanim can eat it, it's chulin enough to be removed ultimately from the parsha of Meilah. However, v'chol shelo haisala shas heter kol kohanim, but any time that a karban does not have a shas heter for kohanim, so any time that a karban ultimately is not permitted for kohanic consumption, then mo'olin ba. So we'll say again, this is a very logical klal. If the kohanim can't eat it, then by definition, if the kohanim can't eat it, who does it belong to? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If it belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu / the Beis HaMikdash, then by definition it is subject to Meilah. So the Mishnah gives an example. What's an example of a sacrificial item that was permitted to the Kohanim and therefore again no longer subject to Meilah? So the Mishnah says, Shalana. For example, if you have a karban ultimately again that was left over past its prescribed time, so it becomes asra al nosar. But again, remember, in order to become nosar, it has to have a permitted window of consumption. Oh, shenitmes, right? Or for example, again, the karban became tameh, visheyatzas, or a karban that went out of its prescribed area. Supposedly, these are all examples of karbanos which had a permitted window of consumption, but then something subsequently occurred to render it unfit. But once it had that window of consumption, it is no longer subject to Meilah. What's an example of something that did not have a window of permitted consumption to Kohanim? So an example I will say would be that there was a psul in the shchita. The shechita itself wasn't good. When the karban was shechted, ultimately it was shechted chutz lizmana. It was shechted with the intention to consume it outside of its prescribed time, v'chutz limkoma, or outside of its prescribed space, its prescribed area. V'shekiblu psulin v'zarku es namo. And let's say, for example, psulin. So Rashi and Mishnah explained what was the definition of psulin. Ba'ali mumin. Let's say you have a kohen who was a baal mum, unfit for avoda, who did the kabbalah and the zrika. Now we're going to see if it's and the zrika or the zrika. We'll discuss that in the Gemara. But for now, ultimately, see the example that the Gemara, that the Mishnah is bringing over here is that if there was a psul in the shchita, or ultimately again a psul in the kabbalah or the zrika, so that's an example of a karban that was never fit for kohanic consumption. Because it was never fit for kohanic consumption, therefore what? It is subject to Meilah. So we'll say this is the klal. Once it becomes fit for Kohanic consumption, it is no longer subject to Meilah. If it was never fit for Kohanic consumption, never becomes fit for Kohanic consumption, it is subject to Meilah. Great. Amalei bar Kafra. We'll say this is so incredible. Amalei bar Kafra. Kafra said to Bar Pedas, Ben Achusi, son of my sister. So apparently Bar Pedas was Bar Kafra's nephew. Son of my sister. Re'ei ma'ata sha'alani b'til machar b'beis hamedrash. Here's what I want you to ask me tomorrow in the Beis Medrash. Right? So Bar Kafra is telling his nephew, when we get to Beis Medrash tomorrow, here's the topic I need you to bring up. Look at Rashi. Re'ei ma'ata sha'alani sha'al lo hadiktani b'mas nisin. So again, he's feeding him the question. Here's what I want you to go ahead and bring up in the Beis Medrash tomorrow. What I want you to bring up, Heter shchita shaninu. So both say this is actually quite fascinating. So both say, here's the shayla. When we speak about the idea that something has to have a shas heter kohanim, something has to have a moment where it's permitted for the kohanim, and therefore no longer subject to Meilah. So what does that mean? Is it, on one hand, do we say what we call shas heter shchita shaninu? Look at the last Rashi in the daf. Heter shchita shaninu. Techevan shenishchata ketikna below psul. Do we say that as long as the karban was shechted properly, without any disqualification, hainu shas heter, va'af agav d'shuv nifsala Yotzis midei Meilah. So the Gemara is asking, Bar Kafra is telling Bar Padas, his nephew, I need you to bring up a yesodistic shayla. When we speak about, we've established a principle, and the principle is that once the carbon becomes permitted, quote unquote, to Kohanim, it is no longer subject to Meilah. So at what point does it become permitted? Do we say heter shchita? Heter shchita means as long as the shchita was done correctly, we call that permitted to Kohanim, and therefore what? No longer subject to Meilah. Top of hay. Oh, heter zrika shaninu. Or is it no? Heter zrika, heter zrika means, do you need shchita and Kabbalah? And Kabbalah. So now, again, everything is there to allow for a proper zrika. As long as you get the carbon to the point where a proper zrika could occur, whether the zrika occurs is almost irrelevant, but you get it to the point that it could occur, that's ultimately at the time, that's called heter kohanim, and no longer subject to me. Look at Tap Rashi, O heter zrika shaninu, tiafa pisha shachat karaib, even if you shechted the animal by itself, that's not enough. Rather, ba'inan tetehavi kabbalah nami below psul. The Kabbalah itself must also occur without any disqualification. The kiba karai, hotel zrika. Once you received it in the right way, it is now permitted for zrika. The afagam da'adayin lo nizrak damo havi ki'ilu nizrak beheter. The chala omid lizarik kizarak dami. The chayvad in eskabel because harai v'nir lizrika shuvein b'mi'ila. So do we say? So we're asking a fundamental question over here. We know the principle. The principle is once the carbon becomes permitted for Kohanic consumption, or we'll call it mutar l'kohanim, it is no longer subject to Meilah. What we're trying to find out is at what stage of the sacrificial process is it called mutar l'kohanim? Is it just enough if the shechita is done correctly? And once the shechita is done correctly, essentially that's quote unquote mutar l'kohanim and therefore no longer subject to Meilah? Or is it that no, you need shechita and Kabbalah? Both I just want to point out, heter zrika doesn't mean zrika was done. Heter zrika means you have the ability to do zrika. The ability to do zrika is predicated on two avodas: shchita, Kabbalah, right? And once Kabbalah has been done, Rashi says over here that roi lezrika kizarak dami. Once something becomes permitted for zrika, it's as if the blood has already been sprinkled. That's not meaning you still have to do the actual zrika. But l'mayis again, do we say that's enough to remove the animal from Meilah? Oh, hetrachila. Rabbi said third possibility is hetrachila. What's hetrachila? Look at Rashi. Oh, hetrachila shenu da'afakav dinishchat v'niskabel karai li'olam lo yotze midei Meilah ad shenizrak hadam. The yesh bo shas hetrachila. Or do we say no? Hetrachila, Rabbi said, means what? That you need shchita, Kabbalah, and zrika. That it is only once zrika is done, right? So that's what achila means. Achila means after zrika, then Rabbi say the carbon mamish becomes permitted to go ahead and be consumed by the kohanim. So Rabbi says this is the shaila. This is the shaila. So says Bar Kafra to his nephew Bar Pedas tomorrow in the Beis Medrash, and he uses to bring up the following shaila. At what point in time specifically is a carbon removed from the halachos of Meilah? Is it at heter shchita, as long as the shchita was done correctly, no longer any Meilah? Is it heter zrika, as long as shchita and Kabbalah were done, that's enough? Or is it heter achila, which requires shchita, Kabbalah, zrika?
Why do they just say shchita or zrika? Why do they put it in a convoluted way? Why not just say, do you need shchita or do you need zrika? Why not just say it that way as opposed to at the time and...
So they are saying heter shchita is shchita. Right, heter shchita, shchita. Heter zrika, it's not convoluted, it only sounds convoluted to us because it's not our first language. Heter zrika means, really, if you think about it, at the time that zrika becomes permitted. When does zrika become permitted? At the time of Kabbalah. You want to, why doesn't it just say Kabbalah? Yeah. I don't know. It's a good shaila. Maybe they needed the daf to be a certain size. I don't know. I don't know. I hear it. So says the Gemara. So we'll say says the Gemara. So which one is it? So we have a machlokes. Chizkiya Amar heter shchita shaninu. Dr. Buck, you have students who I'm sure write essays all the time, right? To fill out pages, right? So Chizkiya Amar heter shchita shaninu. So we'll say Chizkiya says that ultimately heter shchita. So Chizkiya says all you need is shchita to be done correctly, and once shchita is kosher, then ultimately again it is removed from Meilah. Now understand the novelty in there. I just want to point out, The one thing you can't disagree on is at what point in time can Kohanim actually eat the carbon? Only after Zrika. So I just want to point out that they're not arguing on that. What they're arguing about is Legabe Meilah. At what point in time does something fall into the category of Heter Achil, of Heter Kohanim? So it's possible that again, once some major process is done, that major process could remove the carbon from Meilah. So Chizkiah will say, once the Shechita is done correctly, ultimately again the animal is removed from Meilah. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Heter Achila Shaninu. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's Heter Achila. In other words, once it's permitted for actual consumption, which is when? After Zrika, then it's removed from Meilah. Amar Rabbi Zera. So Rabbi says, fundamental machlokes. So interestingly enough, it appears that you don't find an opinion who subscribes to the second approach. Because remember again, Bar Kafir brought up that there are three possibilities: Heter Shchita, Heter Zrika, or Heter Achila. The machlokes Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan, Chizkiah saying Heter Shchita, and Rabbi Yochanan saying Heter Achila. No one seems to be holding ultimately again of Heter Zrika. Interesting. Says the Gemara, Amar Mizera, Lo Daika Masnisin. So Rabbi Zera says, here's our problem. Our Mishnah does not seem to align the Lo Chizkiah or the Lo Rabbi Yochanan. Our Mishnah doesn't seem to support either of these two views. How so? So Tanan, Rabbi, listen to this, because what did our Mishnah say? Shalana v'shenitmeis. So Rabbi said, when the Mishnah gives examples of a carbon that had a heter for Kohanim and subsequently became disqualified, what are the examples the Mishnah gives? Shalana, a carbon that was left over past its prescribed time, what we would call nosar. Shenitma'a, it became tameh. Vishayatasa, or ultimately again it was taken out of the prescribed area. So the Gemara says, what's the case? Let's analyze for a moment the case of lan, right? The case of where it was left over. What was left over? Lav delan dam. Are we not talking about a case where the blood was just never sprinkled and the blood itself was left over past its prescribed time? Look at Rashi, right across in Rashi. Meilah delandam sheniskabel b'kos karoi. The blood, there was proper shchita, proper kabbalah, but the blood was left over. V'achar kach lon kodem zrika. And yet, what do we see from here, Abosai? See, even though the blood was left over in a cup, v'katani ein mo'alin bo. And yet the Mishnah said that what? The Mishnah said that halacha l'maisa, it is not subject to Meilah. Then I was saying, now what does that sound like? Why isn't that carbon subject to Meilah? It must be because the Mishnah is holding that what? In order to take away from Meilah, what do you need? You need Shchita and Kabbalah, Heter Zrika. And as long as you had Shchita and Kabbalah, once it's in the cup, like Rashi said before, Kala Zara, Kala Roy, Zrika, Kizaruk Dami, and that's enough. So the Mishnah seems to indicate that all you need is Shchita and Kabbalah. Once you have Shchita and Kabbalah, ultimately, again, that's called Heter Kohanim, and the carbon is no longer subject to Meilah. We'll say there's only one problem. That's neither like Chizkiah nor like Rabbi Yochanan. Ushmamina Heter Zrika Shaninu. To which the Gemara says, Lo. Delan basar. No, that's not the case. The case of lina, the case of leftover sacrificial item, is not where the blood was left in the cup. The blood was sprinkled. So we'll say, what was left over? The basar. The basar aval dam is darik. But ultimately, again, the blood, in fact, itself was sprinkled. Mishum hachi katani ein mo'alin bo. Therefore, the Mishnah says, the carbon is no longer subject to Meilah. So therefore, I both say again, and if anything, right? I'm sorry, Mishmachi Katani in Mo'alin both, right? So we'll say, so therefore, again, in fact, based on what we just said, the Mishnah seems to support Rabbi Yochanan, because what are we talking about over here? We're talking about a carbon that had Shchita, Kabbalah, and Zrika. Okay, it subsequently becomes disqualified because of Nosar, because of Lina, seemingly supporting the position of Rabbi Yochanan that Heter Achila is ultimately what removes the animal or removes the carbon from Meilah. So Tanan, ve'ezo hishalo haisala shasa kosher. Ultimately, again, Bosai, I just want to point out something very interesting. We're going to see over here that there's a fundamental machlokes how to read this Gemara. Machlokes in Rashi and Tosas. So actually, as I was looking at this last night, and we're going to see two different wordings. We're going to go with Tosas. We're going to go with Tosas' reading of this Gemara. For one simple reason, I looked in Art Scroll because I was curious to see who's right. So I figure Art Scroll's going to know who's right. So Art Scroll quotes Tosas. So I don't know why. I don't know why, and the truth is, You'll see Rashi actually seems much clearer in this sugya, but I guess I trust Articles Machriya more than myself. So we're going to go with Tosfos' reading of this Gemara. So therefore, you're going to see a number of dramatic changes occur in the gear. So we'll go through it together. So here we go. Tnan. So remember again, we'll say next case. So ultimately again, so what is the example of a karban? Right? They never had a shasa kosher, was never permitted to kohanim, and therefore again still remains subject to Meilah. Shenishcheta chutz lizmana v'chutz limkoma v'shekiblu psulin v'zarku asdama. So we'll say, so the Mishnah says, again, essentially the karban was shechted with the intention to consume it outside of its permitted time, or to go ahead and consume it outside of its permitted place, which was essentially renders it what? Renders it pigul, right? Or shekiblu psulin, or a balmum did Kabbalah, v'zarku astama, and did zrika. So we'll say, so these are all examples where the shchita, the Kabbalah, the zrika, ultimately again are all possible, and therefore halacha lamaisa, the karban itself was never sacrificially fit, therefore again remains subject to Meilah. So the Gemara says, Heichi dami. What's the case? Now, I'm going to say the Gemara is specifically focusing on the last part over here, which reads, Shekiblu psulin v'zarku astama. So I'll say, so the Pashat reading of this case is what? A kohen who's pasal, balmum, did Kabbalah and zrika. That's what it sounds like. The pasal did, the kohen who's pasal did both. Say Chidami, what's the case? Ilema, Dizarku psulin, the kiblu psulin. So we'll say that goes. Sion just changes the order over here. If you look in that little letter, well, you don't have to look at it, I'll read it to you. It's a little letter dalit on the right hand corner. Ilema de kiblu psulin, vizarku psulin. If you want to tell me that ultimately, again, a kohen who was pasul did the Kabbalah and did the zrika. Let's say a balmum did the Kabbalah, did the zrika. Lama li adi ikatarti. I don't understand. Why do I need a balmum doing the Kabbalah and the zrika? Or I'll say, why? Why? The truth is, all you need is one, right? As long as the balmum is doing one of those things, the karban is disqualified. Ella, so what must be the case? The kablua psulin, right? It must be the case was where what? Where ultimately, again, someone who was pasul did the Kabbalah, O zarkuhu, right? O zarkuhu. So again, Tosfos changes this over here as to O zarkuhu psulin. So rather, what must be the case? The case is or, right? Either you had psulim who did Kabbalah or zrika, v'katani mo'alinbo. And yet, what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah teaches me that ultimately, again, this karban is still subject to Meilah. Shmamina. What do you see from here? So again, Tosfos changes this to heter achila shaninu. And we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that halacha lemaisa, it is heter achila. That ultimately, again, in order for a karban to no longer be subject to Meilah, it has to reach the threshold of heter achila. What's the threshold of heter achila? What do you need for heter achila? Shchita, Kabbalah, zrika. Right? And therefore, again, if you don't reach that threshold, if you don't get to the zrika finish line, then what? Then halacha l'maisa, the karban remains subject to Meilah. To which the Gemara says, Maskif for Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef says, Isagadaitra, Ika liflugi hachi. If that's true, then halacha l'maisa, you need heter achila. That in order for the karban to no longer be subject to Meilah, ultimately you need shchita, kabbalah, zrika. So why don't you distinguish the following? Ika liflugi hachi, hadisnan hasam, chatas psulabos. Listen to this interesting case. So if that's the case that you need heter achila, what about the following situation? Chatas psulas. Suppose that you have a chatas that is pasul. Rashi says, so however it becomes pasul is irrelevant over here. So what's the halacha? Ein dama ta'un kibo. So we'll say there's an interesting halacha. Normally, if chatas blood gets on a garment, that garment requires kibus, requires laundering. In other words, you can't walk out of the Beis HaMikdash with that chatas blood absorbed into your clothing. It requires kibus. So now the Mishnah says over here, Mishnah says, chatas psula. What happens if you have the blood of a chatas that is pasul? Ein damata and kibus. Its blood does not require laundering. Bein shahaisala shas hakosher v'nifsala. Whether ultimately this is a chatas that was kosher and then became pasul, or whether it was never kosher. As long as at the time that the blood spurted on your clothing, the chatas was pasul. Again, whether it was kosher and became pasul, whether it was never kosher altogether. Halacha l'maisa, again, if the blood of a chatas psula spurts on your clothing, it doesn't require kibus. Ezohi shahisala shasa kosher v'nifsala. What's an example of a chatas that was kosher and then became pasul? Shalana vishenitmes oshiyatza. So we'll say, so a case of a chatas that was kosher, very simple. It's a chatas that was kosher but was left over past its prescribed time, or it became tameh, or ultimately, again, it was taken out of its prescribed area. Ve'izohi shalo haisala shasa kosher. What's an example of a chatas that never had a permitted window? Shenishchata chutz limkoma chutz lizmana. So we'll say an example would be a chatas that had a psul in its shchita, right? It was shechted with the intention to eat it outside of its prescribed time, outside of its prescribed place, or shekiblu psulin v'zargo es dama. Or a case where what? A kohen who was pasul did kabbalah and then did zrika. Sehechidami. So again, I will say, remember, we're picking up on this wording because the wording sounds like that the pasul kohen is doing what? Both Kabbalah and Zrika. So let's analyze this. So we'll say, so that would be the case. That would be a case ultimately of a chatas that never had a shas kosher. Where ultimately, again, either there was a psul in the shchita, or even if the shchita was okay, but you had a kohen balmum doing Kabbalah and Zrika. So hechidami ilema de kablu psulin v'zarku psulin. If you want to say that it's a case where the kohen who was pasul did both the Kabbalah as well as the Zrika, who de'in da'un tamon kibus. So I will say that would be the case where the blood doesn't require any type of laundering because the kohen pasul did both the Kabbalah and the Zrika. I could infer from that what? Ha kablu ozarku kshirim da'un ta'un kibus. We'll say what that sounds like over here is that what? Is that if halacha l'maisa, you had a kosher, let's say both of those things, both Kabbalah and Zrika weren't done by psulin, but one of them was done by ksherim, then what? Then the blood would require laundering. So we'll say that, meaning that that's a logical assumption. If you're going to tell me that the case of the chatas that doesn't, the case of the blood of the chatas that doesn't require kibus is a case where what? The Kabbalah and the Zrika was done by psulin. I can infer from that what? That if either the Kabbalah or the Zrika were done by who? By ksherim, then what? The garment would require kibus. To which the Gemara says, well, that doesn't make sense. I'll tell you why. Karikan asher yazat midama velo shekvar huza. Both I look at Rashi over here. An interesting halacha. Karikan asher yazat midama velo shekvar huza. Rashi says, kilomar asher yazat midama. So listen to this. The pasuk says, the pasuk that the Gemara is quoting over here is Kol asher yiga b'vsara yikdash v'asher yiza midama ala beged asher yiza la techabes b'makom kadosh. So as I said, the Torah says over explicitly that if the blood of the chatas gets onto a garment, so that garment ultimately again has to be laundered. Asher yiza midama. So Rashi says over here, Kilomar asher yiza, Asher yiza midama omid lahazos. So I will say, interestingly enough, when does the garment require laundering? When what type of blood was sprinkled on it? The blood ha'omed lahazos. It is only blood that is ready to be used for zrika, which means da'adain lo nasis mitzvaso. So it is only if chatas blood was sprinkled on the garment and what? Hazah, or I should say zrika, was not yet done. That's when the garment requires laundering. However, right, kishenitas mimenu ala beged kodem zrika, obishas zrika, ton kibus, velo shekvar huza. But Rabbi say if zrika was already done and then blood of the chatas got on the garment, then what? The garment does not require kibus. De la'achar hazah ein hamosar ton kibus. Because I will say after sprinkling, after zrika was done, the leftover blood that gets on the garment does not require any type of laundering. The me'achar shenizrak bo zarko kasher bein zarko pasal eno ta'on kibus. Because I will say after zrika was done, at the end of the day halacha l'maisa, the garment does not require kibus. One more time, the me'achar shenizrak bo Zarko kasher, bein zarko pasol, ein ton kibus. So we'll say once the zrika was done, then halacha lamaisa, the garment no longer needs any type of kibus. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi say, so if you're telling me that halacha lamaisa, if ultimately, again, if the zrika was done by a kasher, so let's analyze this. So if the zrika was in fact done by a kohen who was kasher, and then subsequently chatas blood gets on a garment, that is not going to require kibus altogether. To which the Gemara says, Ela lav dafka. So rather, we'll say, what do you have to say? You have to say that the Mishnah over here is imprecise. It's not precise. The wording is not precise. Look at Rashi, lav dafka. Dafilu kiblu ksherin v'zarku ksherin. Ein dama ta'un kibus. Achar ziga. Because we'll say, halacha l'maisa, if indeed Kabbalah and Zrika were done by ksherim, and then afterwards chatas blood gets on the garment, ultimately again it will not require any kind of kibus. Afagav dahabi chatas kshera horilu kvar huza aval kodem zrika. But I will say blood of the chatas gets on the garment before zrika. Town kibus kedin chatos kshera de town kibus bein kabbalah zrika. So we'll say, so what you have to say over here is that the lashon of this mishnah is imprecise. Amud beis hachenami. So now we have a problem. Hachenami lav dafka. So Rabbi say, what you'll have to say over here is that the lashon of our Mishnah by Meilah will also be imprecise. Look at Rashi. Hachanami legabi Meilah diktani shekiblu psulin. There Rabbi say, our Mishnah, which also uses the lashon of what? That apostle ultimately against someone who was unfit, a balmum, did Kabbalah, is also imprecise. Look at Rashi, lav dafka, hachi denema, ha kiblu ksherin v'zarko psulin, ein mo'alin bo. So we'll say, therefore again, that it's also imprecise. You can't make the inference that if ksherim did the Kabbalah, and psulin did the zrika, that ultimately again it would not be subject to Meilah. Ta'afilu kiblu ksherim v'zarko psulin mo'alin, the hetra achila shaninan deba'inan gabi zrika v'leka. So we'll say, here's what's interesting. So we wanted to make an inference. We wanted to make an inference from the Mishnah that what? That halacha l'maisa, even if you had a case of kiblu ksherim and zarku psulin, that ultimately again it should not be subject to Meilah. Why? Because maybe the Mishnah is teaching us that what Rabbi say, hetra zrika. That as long as halacha l'maisa again, you had shchita and you had Kabbalah done kidas ukidin, you're good to go. To which the Gemara says, no, don't infer anything from the Mishnah. In fact, Rabbi said the halach is as we espoused before, that at what point in time is a carbon no longer subject to Meilah? Only when? Hetrachila. Hetrachila is when Rabbi said, when's hetrachila? Shchita, Kabbalah, Zrika. Only once you've gone through all three of those processes and the carbon is now actually fit for consumption, is it no longer subject to Meilah. But if any of those processes have not been properly done, the carbon will remain subject to Meilah. Imkain lama lemisnei tarti. So I'll say, if that's the case, halacha lemaisa, why are we listing two imprecise Mishnayos? To which the Gemara says, Ela li olam de Meilah dafka. The truth is, rather, we have to say that when it comes to Meilah, the Mishnah actually is specific and correct. The Hakamashlan, I will say, so what is it coming to teach us? It's actually very interesting. The Hakamashlan de psul ose shirayim. Rabbi says, so in fact, what we're coming to learn from the Mishnah, Rabbi says, is a separate halacha. We'll come back to the machlokes, Rabbi Yochanan and Chizkiah in just a little bit, but in fact, there's another lesson to be learned over here, which is that a psul, a kohen who is pasul, makes shirayim. So we'll say, what is shirayim? Look, this is actually incredible. Look at Rashi. Ta'akamash malan oses shirayim v'niskabel hadam b'shnei kosos. So let's read it. The psul is shirayim. Afagav the kibel psul v'zarak the kibel kasher v'zarak laf klumi. Rabbi said, listen to this incredible case. This is really amazing. So listen to this incredible case. Let's say the following situation. Really incredible. You shakted the carbon. What happens? You have a kohen who's a psul, who's a pasul. I hate you can't really use the word pasul by any Jew, right? He has a mum. He's a baal mum. No one's Jew is a pasul, right? I'm sorry? Unqualified. Especially by Kohanim, you said? Calm down over there, right? Right, so now listen to this. So you have a kohen who's disqualified. He's a Baal Mum. So I say, now watch this. This is incredible. So you do the shechita. Let's say again the shechita was done kosher. You have a Baal Mum who now comes along and does what? The kibel pasel, v'zarak. So I say you have a kohen who's a Baal Mum who does Kabbalah and then does zrika. So obviously what? No good. But watch this case. The animal is still spurting lifeblood. So what happens? A kohen kosher comes along and does Kabbalah and zrika afterwards. So we'll say fascinating case, no? So what's the halacha over here? The Gemara is positing that halacha l'maisa, the carbon will be pasul. Why? Because the avoda of the first kohen Baal Mum renders the rest of the blood to what's called shirayim. Shirayim are leftovers. We'll say leftovers are pasul. Is it we're going to see it. Concept, we all know this, right? For us, usually it's like by Tuesday, Shirayim are pasul, right? Leftovers are pasul. Now, we'll say, but in the Beis HaMikdash, again, essentially what Shirayim says is like this. Once someone who is unfit inserts himself into the sacrificial order, we're done. Even though, again, the chiddush over here is, even though there's still lifeblood spurting out of this animal, so there's still enough blood to be able to do a proper Kabbalah, proper Zvika. Once someone who is unfit inserted himself into the process, essentially it renders, now we'll say, by the way, what's Shirayim? By Dam we have a concept of Shirayim. Remember we spoke about this. By Dam, for Zvika, which blood do you have to use? Again, which blood do you have to use? Lifeblood, right? Lifeblood. What's the leftover blood called? Who remembers? There's a special word for this. Damatamsis, right? Damatamsis, excellent. Tamsis blood, right? Damatamsis. So ultimately, again, so essentially, once someone who's pasul involves himself in the sacrificial order, pretty much the rest of the blood becomes known as damatamsis, leftover blood, and therefore, even though he quickly gathers up lifeblood, sprinkles it on, it's not going to be good. So Havagav the kibel pasul v'zarak, the kibel kasher v'zarak, lav klumhi. Why? Look at Rashi. I'm sorry, before I get to Rashi, my timer, what's the reason? The Shirayim ninu. Because ultimately, again, the blood is reckoned like Shirayim. Look at Rashi. Lav klumhu, eladino kishiyare hadam, shemhuza midama ala beged, bein zrika de kasher lezrika de pasol, eno ta'on kibus. Inami shos adam dino l'shapech la'amo, kedin Shirayim di amrina. So therefore, again, in both of these cases, halacha l'maisa, if you're talking in the realm of Meilah, ultimately, again, once the pasul kohen does Kabbalah, does Zrika, the carbon is unfit, and therefore what? Remains subject to Meilah. Right? Remains subject to Meilah. In the case of the blood of the Chatos, so once you have a pasul who does Kabbalah and Zrika, even if subsequently blood of the Chatos ultimately goes ahead and gets sprinkled on, ultimately, again, ein tu'unan kibus. It will not require any kind of laundering, and for regular sacrificial order, the rest of the blood ultimately would be poured down the drain of the mizbeach. But yet Rish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, Pasul, Maushe Ase Shirai. Rish Lakish asked this kasha from Rabbi Yochanan. A pasul, right? A kohen who is pasul involves himself ultimately again in the avoda. Does he make the remainder of the blood into shirayim? So what happens? Is actually very interesting. And Reish Lakish responded, he said no. He said, Eilach will not know, but let's qualify this. Eilach she'asi shirayim. I will say the only thing that makes blood into shirayim is the following thing. Shirayim, also can remember, means leftover blood that would be unfit for further use. Eilach davar she'asi shirayim, ella chutz lizmano v'chutz limkomo. So what Reish Lakish posits, that the only thing that halacha l'maisa makes blood into shirayim is a pigul intention. Is an intention ultimately again for chutz lizmano and chutz limkomo. Hoil umeratzim lepigulo. Ultimately again, since these machshavas render the carbon ultimately again pigul, therefore they have the ability to render the subsequent blood shirayim as well. My lav bar mi pasul. So we'll say ultimately again, does this not come to exclude the zrika of a pasul, right? That if a pasul does a zrika, the rest of the blood is not shirayim. Lo afilu pasel. Rather, no, it comes to include even a pasel. The Rabbi say, if a kohen pasel does Kabbalah, does Zrika, that ultimately renders the rest of the blood shirayim. But that's not what Reish Lakish said. Reish Lakish said there is nothing that renders the rest of the blood pasel except for a machshav of chutz lizmano chutz limkomo. This is what it means to say. Ein lecha davar she'eno meratze b'tzibur v'ose shirayim elo chutz lizmano v'chutz limkomo. So Rabbi says that's very interesting. What he means to say is like this: there is nothing else ultimately, again, that on one hand allows the carbon to be partially valid in the context of a carbon tzibur, and yet makes it shirayim, with the exception of a machshava for chutz lizmano chutz limkomo. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Haki kamer ein lecha she'en meratze b'tzibur kigon pigol v'noser v'yotz isha ose shirayim lifsal elo chutz lizmano o chutz limkomo da'af agav the chutz limkomo ein meratze b'tzibur ose shirayim hol meratze lepikol. So we'll say if you have a machshava of chutz lizmano chutz limkomo, it's actually very interesting. We've seen this concept before. When you have a we'll say, what happens when you have the machshava to consume the carbon outside of the prescribed area? So what happens? It becomes pigul. What happens when it becomes pigul? It becomes totally disqualified. But interestingly enough, even though it becomes totally disqualified, there is some type, it's actually interesting, there is some type of like chalos shem carbon on your avoda. Why? Because the qualification of pigul is a carbonic qualification. So even though you've disqualified the carbon, ultimately what? You've made it into a carbon. I don't know if that makes sense. But in order for something to become pigul, I should say differently, the only thing that becomes pigul is what? Is a carbon, right? Is a carbon, right? So halach lemaisa, when you have a machshavas pigul, as much as you've disqualified the carbon, you've also endowed it with carbonic status, because the only thing that can become pigul is something that has the status of a carbon. So therefore, again, only a machshavas pigul, which renders it a carbon, and subsequently disqualified, has the ability to make the rest of the blood shirayim. However, because aval tameh. But I will say ultimately, again, situation of Tumah, the Isa B'tzibur, Mashve Shirayim, Mashi Shirayim. So I will say, if you have a situation, Halacha L'maisa of a Tameh, Rashi says, Aval Tameh, Hainu Pasel, the Meratzenami B'tzibur, the Tumah, the Chuyahi B'tzibur, Mashve. So let's listen to this. But if you have a Kohen Tameh, Rabbi says another example of a psul. Remember again, Rashi said that the case of a Kohen Pasel is what? A Kohen Balmum. But the truth is, a case of a kohen who's tameh is also a case of a kohen who's pasel. So Rabbi says, listen to this. If you have a case of a kohen who is tameh, ultimately again who does zrika and kabbalah, ultimately again he will also go ahead and make shiraim. Now, Rabbi saying, what the Gemara is saying is like this: when does your avoda make all of the rest of the blood shiraim? When there was some level of authenticity or effectiveness to your avoda. If your avoda was totally ineffective, then what? You do not render the rest of the blood shirayim. Makes sense. Why not? Because you haven't done anything. So halach l'maaseh, if you haven't done anything, then you can't call the rest of the blood shirayim. If you've done something that is quasi-effective, then what? You make the rest of the blood shine. So for example, I will say, if the Kohen has a machshavas pigul, he has in mind to go ahead and offer it up out of the prescribed time, or eat outside of the prescribed time, or outside of the prescribed place, so he makes a pigul. We'll say pigul is a chalos shem on a carbon. Because he's done something quasi-carbonically effective, therefore what? The rest of the blood is unfit to become shirayim. Where else do you see this? Tameh. This is incredible. If a Kohen who's tameh does Kabbalah and Zrika, so we'll say, what's the halacha? He renders the rest of the blood shirayim. Why? His tameh is unfit. There is a case, I will say, of where a kohen who is tameh could do the avoda. Where is that? By a carbon tzibur. So I will say, we know the halacha is that tumah hutra b'tzibur, that if 51% of Klal Yisrael is tameh, ultimately, again, you could have a kohen who is tameh offer communal offerings. It doesn't work for individual offerings, but communal offerings it'll work for. Therefore, again, if a kohen who's tameh does Kabbalah and Zrika, even though he's unfit in this particular context, he's in the parsha of karbanos. Because in the parsha of karbanos, therefore what? His act has a quasi-effectiveness, and because it has a quasi-effectiveness, therefore what? What does it make the rest of the blood? shirayim. Now we'll say now what I'll sharp psulim they're lo istan b'tzibor lo mashin shirayim. So we'll say but other psulim who don't work b'tzibor would not make the rest of the blood shirayim. So we'll say so I'll tell you for example where did this come up? I'll give you an example of this. What happens if a non-Kohen? I want nothing more in this world than to be a Kohen. Mamish, it's really, like, if you're looking to get me something, if you could somehow get me kahuna, it would be incredible. I would give anything for it. Shabbos say, if someone like me, a regular Yisrael, were to come into the Beis HaMikdash and to do Kabbalah and Zrika. Shabbos say, what would be the halacha? What's the status of my avoda? What's the status of my avoda? Puzzle. Do I make the rest of the blood shirayim? No. At least according to this, come over there. Isn't this incredible? I don't make the blood shirayim. Why? Because Rabbi say the rest of the blood only becomes shirayim when, although the service that was done was invalid, but it's within the framework of carbonic service. There's some level of what we'll call carbonic authenticity. So the Kohen has a machshavas pigul, but pigul is a carbonic designation. The Kohen is tamei, but a tamei Kohen could do avoda under certain circumstances. So where there is a level of carbonic authenticity that renders the rest of the blood shirayim, which are subsequently unfit. Rabbi said, listen how amazing this is. I'm a Yisrael. If I go in and I do Kabbalah in Zrika, what is there any carbonic authenticity to what I did? Zero. Therefore, what? Therefore, the rest of the blood is not shrine, which means what? No shrine. And therefore, what? And therefore, if another Kohen were to go ahead and swoop in, and there was still lifeblood spurting out, if he were to be able to get some, we were able to do Kabbalah and Zrika, he could salvage the carbon. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible? Good, thank you. Okay, good. So let's go a little bit weiter. Tashma, let's just do a few more lines, then we'll stop for today. So Tashma, hapigol li'olam mo'alin bo. So I'll say ultimately again, pigol is always subject to Meilah. Rashi says, hapigol shechishev b'shchita. So the case over here is at shchita, at a machshavas pigol, and yet what does the Mishnah, the Brisa says? It is always subject to Meilah. Lav de lo zarak. So we're not talking about a case where zrika was never done. Ushmamina heter zrika shaninu. So we'll say, so what do you see from here? So it must be a case of where shchita was done with the machshavas pigul, zrika was never done. Why is it always subject to Meilah? Because we'll say, going back to our machlokes before, because apparently in order to leave Meilah, what do you have to come to? Heter zrika. Right? You have to, we'll say, what does heter zrika mean? There has to be Kabbalah. Right? Kabbalah ultimately again must have been done. So it must be again, you require heter zrika. Because it's never passed the threshold of zrika, therefore what? It still remains subject to Meilah. To which the Gemara says, lo, the zarak. Right? I'm sorry, lav lo zarak, ushmamina heter zrika, sheninu lo, zrika, zarka. So I say, no, the case over here is where zrika was done as well. Umayli olam. Abba said, what does it mean when we say that pigul is subject to Meilah forever? Ha kamash milan kid Rav Gidel. Dam Rav Gidel amarav. Zrikas pigul eina motzi midei Meilah. Ve'ena mevi lidei Meilah. Abba said, rather again, it's just coming to go ahead and exclude the position of Rav Gidel, because Rav Gidel said in general that Rabbi say a zrika of pigul does not remove kadshei kadashim from Meilah, nor does it bring kadshim kalim to the state of Meilah. Therefore, again, I will say this brisa provides no proof either way. So I will say what we end off with this daf over here is the fundamental machlokes. Ultimately, I will say here's what we know. We know the klal. Let's just go ahead, quick chazara before we end. What's the klal? The klal is kol shahaisa lo, as the lashon of the Mishnah is kol shahaisa lo shas heter lekohanim. As long as the carbon has a shas heter for kohanim, then what? It is not subject to Meilah. If it does not have heter lekohanim, then what? It is subject to Meilah. The machlokes is what is considered shas heter lekohanim. That is a fundamental machlokes. And on both sides, it appears that we have three possibilities. Possibility number one, heter shchita. All you need is for shchita to be good. Once shchita is good, you've left the parsha of Meilah. Possibility number two, heter zrika. We both say, so again, what does heter zrika mean? Shchita, Kabbalah, i.e. it's ready for zrika. Zrika hasn't been done. As long as you had shchita and Kabbalah, you're good to go. Possibility number three is what we call heter achila. Heter achila means shchita, Kabbalah, zrika, it's mamish ready for carbonic consumption. The machlokas we saw between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan was in the extremes. Chizkiah says heter shchita. Once an animal is shechted properly, that's called heter l'kohanim, and therefore again shas heter l'kohanim, and therefore again it is no longer subject to Meilah. Rabbi Yochanan says heter achila. In order for it no longer to be subject to Meilah, you need proper shchita, kabbalah, and zrika. Who do we paskin like? In Meretz Hashem we will resolve tomorrow. Just a reminder, we are now in Slichos schedule, which means the daf in Meretz Hashem begins at 5:45 tomorrow morning, and the Meretz Hashem I'm going to record Mesilas Hashem through the end of the parak. 5:45 with Slichos, I believe at 6:25 in Meretz Hashem tomorrow.